I'm here with Joseph Ansanelli, the CEO at a company called Gladly. They are improving customer service around the world just by companies signing up to use their product. It's actually pretty cool. So we're going to have Joseph talk a little bit about that. But first, Joseph, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Good to see you.
I'm really excited about today's episode because customer service is such a thing that's near and dear to me, not just because I'm a customer at many of these companies that use your product, but also because I like to help people, and customer service is important to me. I want people who listen to our podcast here and visit our website to have a good experience, even if they're not directly buying a particular product. I still feel it's important to provide good service when and engaging with them on different social platforms. So I come from, I guess you could say, a customer service background myself, but I'm curious. But let's get started in talking about a little about you and your background. So how did you get started with this? And what do you do on like a day-to-day basis at Gladly?
Sounds good. At Gladly as background, we are trying to reinvent customer service, specifically for business to consumer companies, and helping them to deliver on this concept we call radically personal service. And it really stemmed from our just personal experiences and wondering why it was so hard for companies to recognize us as consumers and to engage with us in the same way we engage with people in our personal lives. Like, why is it that the brands that I do business with all the time don't greet me by my name and know all my orders and all that kind of stuff? And we realized that it was not a desire problem or lack of motivation. It was actually a software problem. And the problem is that every other service platform out there treats customer service with cases or tickets. You call, you give you a case number, and I don't know about you, I don't like being treated like a case.
I don't want to be a number. Yeah, right?
Right, exactly, yeah. Right. So, it's funny. I was curious why we use case numbers. It turns out it comes from the legal case file. Like that's
leave it to the lawyers, right?
Yeah. I don't know about you. I don't look to lawyers for relationship advice. Like that's not the place that I go, right?
Right.
So anyway, so we thought, hey, what if we could reinvent the software for companies, specifically business to consumer companies, to manage service, and let's make it about people. We said, if we can put people at the center as opposed to a case or a ticket, so the person being the customer, and secondly, build basically a messaging platform, we thought we could help companies build better relationships. And, it turns out it's working great. I mean, we've got some amazing customers, whether it's, Allbirds and Warby Parker as our customers, or other traditional folks in retail like Tory Burch and UGG and Teva, a bunch of great brands like that. And they're all just sort of reinventing how they deliver service using Gladly. So that's a little about us.
And that's the way I feel like it should be, right? I mean, like it should always be that way, right? Like you pointed out how we got to the number situation. We looked to the lawyers in terms of figuring out customer service, which apparently who would have thought was a terrible idea, right? But that's such a great point. Like, we need to treat our customers as if they're actually our customers and not just some like dot out in the ether, right? That just right. Put a name to that face,
right?
Or put a face to that name or that number or both if you're a number. But yeah, like I just love the message behind and what you guys are working on here. I think it's so important. So I want to talk a little bit about you for a second. What does your day-to-day look like? How do you spend your time as the CEO of this company, Gladly?
Yeah, so I would say that most of my time falls into really three main buckets of where I split my time. One is around our team and people. So everything around recruiting, ensuring the team is really engaged and enabled. I just have a belief that key to success is people first and strategy second. Mm-hmm. And so you got the right people in the right place and they understand what they're doing. Like, that's job number one for building a successful company. And then the second two places that I invest my time is, one is around customers. So everything from acquiring new customers, building relationships with customers, making sure customers are successful. I mean, because I think that who your customers are and what they say about you says a lot about you as a company. right?
Mm-hmm.
Expression, you can tell a lot about someone's by their friends. You can tell a lot about a company based on their customers and what they say about you. And then the third is just product and product innovation. Where are we going with the product? How do we continue to differentiate and innovate? This idea that we had from the beginning of not using cases and tickets and instead using people as the core record. Like, what are those kinds of things that we continually drive innovation? Those are the three places I spend most of my time. There's other things like, occasionally raising money, board meetings, and all that kind of stuff. But that's
All the less fun stuff. Right? Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Still important though.
It's
Still important.
important. It's just not where I spend a ton of time.
Right.
You spend the bulk of your time on those first three.
Do you feel as the CEO of a customer service company that's really working on the forefront, I think, of like thinking about customer service, do you feel obligated or in any way that you and your company to provide exceptional like even more exceptional service?
No question about it. I mean, how could you be a customer service software company and not deliver exceptional service? But I think that that's the case, to be honest, no matter what. I mean, even if you're not doing a customer service company, I think one of the keys to scaling and growing and building a company is you got to figure out how to turn your customers into raving fans, right? Because if you can turn them into raving fans, that builds upon itself in ways that also become a competitive advantage. And so I just think that that's one of the keys to successful entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. I mean, if you can get your customers or a good chunk of them to advocate for you and to, word of mouth is something we talk about a lot. And like, there's literally nothing more powerful, no other way to sell your product in a more powerful way than to have a customer who uses your product and absolutely loves it and tells another person about it. Because usually, here's why. For the main reason is usually the situation in which they're talking about it, it comes off very organically. So it's unprompted. There's no reason for them to say it other than it just came up in the moment, right? So when you get that kind of recommendation from a friend or from someone that you know, it just brings it way to the forefront of your mind. I see you smiling over there. So like,
I totally agree. It's 100% spot on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure you didn't just go out and start this company blindly. You were also
we just on a whim, just like one day, let's just go take on Salesforce.
What's the worst that could happen?
Right.
So you were also a venture partner at Greylock, which means that you obviously evaluated a lot of startups in your when you spent time there. One of the things a lot of early founders do is they talk to a lot of people and they figure out what pain points they're facing in this space. And for you as customer service, so I'm curious what kind of questions you asked, what pain points you were looking to solve, and what people told you when you started doing that research.
Yeah. So what we did before we started is we went and visited, 30 or 40 contact centers. So we just reached out to all these companies. And just said, look, I'm a partner at Greylock. We invest in early stage companies. I would love to talk with you, and then I'd love to come see how you, company XYZ, deliver service. And we literally went into these contact centers, put on the headsets, listened into phone calls, watched the team do email support and chat and all these other things. And it was those meetings which really showed us that the problem with delivering service was primarily a software problem. Because we saw all these companies using these legacy case management and ticketing software tools and how they weren't delivering on this personalized experience. And I remember I sat in with this one company. The name will be, I won't say the name to protect the innocent. And this person called and they said they wanted XYZ thing. And the person went over to their system to go check on it. And they asked the question, have they ever used that before? And the person's like, I use it all the time. And it was like this very awkward moment in the conversation. And I realized it was because, they didn't know who this customer was, right? So it was a lot of those just sitting in and watching. And I think having a mindset, a growth mindset of the fact that, hey, we could do this differently and we could do it better. And I think that some of the best companies come from ideas that in hindsight look obvious, but oftentimes take someone a little crazy to try something that had never been tried before. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Uh,
do.
you know, so so and I think that seeing it firsthand was just invaluable. You just it, you empathize with these companies that are trying to deliver great service, but all these software companies have just let them down, whether it's Salesforce or Zendesk or whoever.
Yeah. And like okay, so I was thinking while you were talking because it was really resonating with me, and I was like, you know, I wish when I called Apple customer service, they actually just knew like a little bit about me before they picked up the phone. Like
Mm.
I every time you call, and this is anyone. I don't want to just nitpick on Apple, but there are a lot of companies where, I mean, any company you call, they don't know a thing about you at the get go. You usually end up having to repeat yourself. 'Cause if you find yourself calling a few times, you know, if you're a long time customer, you have to call a few times that, you know, whenever you need customer support. They never know anything about you. When you first call, you have to restate your whole story and how I know about technology. I know I turned it off and turned it on again, all that stuff. And like, you don't need to coddle me through that, but I'm just looking for support. And I feel like I've almost gotten to the point where I feel like I have like this little spiel that I kind of just like give to kind of like hint that I know what I'm talking about without actually saying I know what I'm talking about, not to sound like a jerk or anything.
Yeah.
But like, it would be great if I just, when I called the customer service line, if they actually knew who I was, a little bit about me.
Right. Well, and the problem there is not the people that are delivering service. Like they actually are
Right.
in that job because they care.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
problem is cases. So what happens in these systems is you contact, it creates a case with a number, and they give you that number. Then when you call them back, what does it do? It creates another case. So now you've got like two things that are storing information. So like, yeah, the first person's in this case, and the second person's in another case, which has nothing in it. That's the idea we have obliterated,
Hmm.
which is instead, it's like, it's Jeff. And Jeff's contacting us. We know who Jeff is. Jeff talked to Joseph last time. We're going to try to get Jeff first back to Joseph. And if not, whoever we match Jeff with, there's just one conversation history from the beginning of time between Jeff and that brand. This way, everyone is just working off of a single, what we call it, a single lifelong conversation between you and the company.
That's how it should be. That's how it should be.
Right.
And it's so shocking to me how that. I'm just glad you came along, Joseph.
No pun intended when you say you're glad.
Right, exactly. No pun intended. I honestly didn't mean that. That's funny. That's really funny. Oh my God. So that's really great. And I think I'm really glad to hear that someone is working on this problem. It means a lot to me because forget the fact that it's good for your company. It helps everybody when everyone knows who they're talking to. And and I like the way you phrased it in terms of lifelong conversations, because as a customer, especially a long time customer, you want to be almost, I mean, I feel like I've been an Apple customer since 2008. They don't really acknowledge that, but like some companies do, which is cool. But like they could, and that could make the experience even that much better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And Apple's better than many others, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's always room for improvement, as I'm sure you'd agree.
Of course. Yeah, totally. And again, it's just, it's because the other thing is like, our view is that we think to deliver great service for business to consumer companies, the needs are very, very different than delivering service for a business to business company. Meaning, if you're Cisco providing support to, let's say, Bank of America, the tools that you need to deliver service to a B of A are very different than delivering, service if you're Crate and Barrel to a consumer. And so part of the idea behind Gladly is to really optimize for that business to consumer experience, as opposed to taking the same things that big companies use to support other big companies and trying to apply that to consumers. We're like, which is what kind of Salesforce has done.
Right.
We're like, hey, let's deliver something which is really focused on the business to consumer problem, because it's a 30, 40 billion dollar a year spend. I mean, it's huge and massive, and consumer spending is 2/3 of the economy and all that good stuff. So
No, yes, I agree. I want to talk a little bit about the future of customer service, which we've kind of already been doing, but more specifically with regard to, the pandemic, which is currently ongoing, and then post-pandemic. What kind of changes do you think we're going to see? And what are we seeing right now that you've seen?
Well, one of the big things I think the pandemic has taught companies, you can use your whatever language you want, is that historically service has been looked at as kind of a back office post-sales problem, right? I mean, countless customer service teams literally work in the warehouses of companies. And I think the thing that people now realize is that, digital and their customer support and customer experience teams really are the new flagship store. They drive more revenue than any individual physical retail location. And consumers obviously have made this huge shift to buying things digitally because, physical retail's been effectively closed. And that consumer behavioral shift with this learnings of the brands, I think, is going to be just a lasting change to how people engage. And I think that it has just driven home the importance of digital. I mean, you've probably seen that graph where, e-commerce as a percentage of retail was growing like a point every single year. And then last year, it went like this, in like 6 months did 10 years of growth. That shift is not going to go back. We're not going back.
Yeah.
That's going to be a permanent shift. And I think that brands now realize that their customer experience, their customer support teams are more like frontline workers. They're like people in your retail store as opposed to some back office support thing. And I think the mindset shift from a cost center to a revenue center, that's a really big deal.
Absolutely. And I feel like this shift has been slowly happening. I mean, you see companies, especially startups and a lot of SaaS-based companies, they all talk about customer success teams, right? It's not customer service anymore. It's all about customer success and, making sure that making sure the customer is getting the most out of the product, which is great. That's how it should be. And I'm sure once they get a hand on Gladly, that'll make their job even better. But I mean, these people are frontline. They're your front line, and when people go on Twitter, they don't see the CEO's message. They see, Jim's customer service representative, his message and what he's written on Twitter. So it's so important that we understand companies understand how much of a face those people are, because they represent your brand. In the old days, like when before social media, right, and before you could really get a hold of someone at a company just by tweeting at them or whatever, it was a lot more difficult to get in touch with companies. I mean, it's still kind of difficult to get in touch with companies to a certain degree, but Twitter has certainly expanded that option. And prior to that, you didn't have to worry about what a customer was saying on the open web, or anywhere on any social network. And now you do. So, right, yeah. And if you can track that, if you can say, hey, Joseph was kind of, ragging on a particular brand because he wasn't happy with his experience, and you can get that in their profile, so they can reach out and perform some kind of remedy. That's so powerful for a brand or a company to be able to do. And I just think it's just about treating people like people, right? Like other
That's
humans.
a big idea.
Right? So we're not, it comes back to what I was saying before about, we're not just some dot out in the ether that's kind of using a product. We're actual people using your product. And I think most companies actually are excited about that. The fact that they're thrilled that they can communicate with their customers better. So I think that's why I think your product is actually going to be really successful, because just frankly, the mindset, like you said, is totally shifting. You can't just be in the back office kind of and these are you can't just kind of let them do their own thing, and just hope they never see the light of day. But that's just not the case anymore. So I love that message that you just had.
Yeah, that's great.
So I want to talk a little bit about chatbots, because we've been talking about humanizing and making things more personal. And I also feel like chatbots have been in the news for a couple of years now. And every time I read about them, oh, they're the next big thing. But I'm curious what your point of view is on this. Are chatbots are they the future, or are they just kind of another tool in the arsenal? Like, how relevant are they to the future of customer service?
Yeah, I think that they're another tool in the arsenal is the way I think about it.
Okay.
And maybe to step back even further, I think about when a consumer either, they have a question either pre-sales or post-sales. It doesn't matter, right? Because I don't think of it just as support being a post-sales thing. I think that we as consumers, we're happy to help ourselves. So like more tools to help consumers help themselves, I think is just a great thing. So it's help centers, and we have this thing called Sidekick, which delivers service like right at the moment on your site, for example. Those are really powerful. And if I can cancel my order or change my order or get a refund, et cetera, without having to engage with a human being, I as a consumer, totally fine doing that.
Yeah.
So we think about great service experiences being a blend of both self-service and assisted service, and keeping those tied together underneath who you are as a person or as a customer, right? And so chatbots are like one tool within that. And we just think that, and I think even more broadly than just chatbots, I just think about how do you automate and orchestrate communications? Because it might not just be in chat, it might be an SMS, it might be an email response, it might be on Twitter or Facebook. Like, automation can help give a better customer experience by getting people the answer or their help or the question that they're looking for answered more quickly. And I think that if you apply them properly, they should deliver a better experience. I think that some of the challenges with like how people have deployed chatbots is they sort of think about it as this like, as kind of a shield or a gate, you know what I mean? And like, that's not helpful. You know what I mean? Like, if you know who someone is and you know that they have an order that's open right now, the ability, like even if they call for that matter, like we do this now in our IVR, you go, hey, we see that you have an open order. Are you calling about that? Would you like the status of that order? Like, yes.
Please.
But if the answer is, yeah, please, like tell me, right? And if the answer is no, that's not why I'm contacting you and I want to just talk to a human being, great. That should be very seamless, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that that's the way we think about it is automation of communications in the context of delivering a great experience. They're here to stay. And I think it's a great tool. And I think consumers like it. Companies benefit from it. But it's one thing. It's not like every conversation is going to be with a computer.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think the blend is definitely the right way to go. I think you answered that beautifully. I have really nothing else to add to that. So I wanted to shift gears while we can, because I obviously I mentioned you were also a venture partner at Greylock, and that's awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about, for other founders in the audience, other entrepreneurs, people who maybe are thinking about starting their own business. I want to talk a little bit about that kind of stuff. So one of the things that you probably have a lot of experience with is selling companies. I'm sure you've been in deals when it wasn't necessarily your company, or you were an investor in a company. So I want to know, what should a founder think about when it's time to sell their company, and how should they know that it's time? Because we recently had on Andrew Gazdecki. I don't know if you know him, but he serial founder, and he just launched a site called Micro Acquire, and he's building it in public, and it's essentially a site where founders, entrepreneurs, developers can list their projects, whether it be a side project or a business that they run, and then other people can buy them, or businesses can buy them.
Oh, interesting.
And so he's already at $300,000 monthly recurring or annual recurring revenue, I believe, just from launching this site a couple weeks back, and which is pretty crazy. So we had him on, and he shared some thoughts on that, which I thought were great. But I want to hear what you have to say. When people should consider selling.
Yeah. So first of all, I don't think there's such thing as an exit strategy.
Okay.
I just don't think there is that. I've never started a company with an exit strategy in mind. I think the only thing you can do is have a success strategy. So you should always start the company with the plan that you're going to make the thing successful and be independent. And if you're doing that, there will be moments where someone realizes that you're being successful and they're going to come knock on your door. That's the best case scenario, right? And I think in that moment, you have to evaluate where you think the company can be and how long you can go and how big the market is. And you can, decide to engage in those conversations or not. And I've been through the process of being involved in taking a company public, personally, that I was involved in, meaning I was, part of, and also selling a company. Like I sold my last company to Symantec for $350 million. And it was in 2007, the financial, the markets were crazy. And it turns out that business now is an $800 million a year business, as part of what was Symantec. So I probably shouldn't have sold the company. But in that moment, we were having a really hard time expanding outside of the US. And we were not convinced, because it was a whole new technology and security space. We weren't convinced if there was going to be a big enough market at the time. And I was very nervous about that. So in that moment, I said, probably best to sell the company at this point. So you have to sort of evaluate the market risk, the product risk, the competitive landscape in those moments to decide if it's the best thing. And you only know in hindsight
You're right.
if it's the right answer. So that's the problem with that decision. It's really not I know this is the right decision. It's almost like in that case, it was a great outcome. I mean, don't get me wrong, but it was clear that there was so much more in front of us, that the thing of being able to sell internationally eventually got solved a couple of years later, and went out to be a big thing. But you just have to sort of evaluate those things: market risk, product risk, competitive risk.
Yeah, so. I have two things I want to touch on. One, I love the idea of not having an exit strategy, because if you go in with the idea that you're going to sell, you almost set yourself up for failure, most likely. Because I'm a huge fan of manifesting kind of success and things like that, and you have to go in there thinking it's going to succeed. You have to believe in that. If you don't think that, the ultimate outcome is whatever. If you're just planning on just building it to sell, that's the wrong intention to go in with. So don't do that. So my second thing is, I want to ask you then, is there a time or a thing when it's when you should not sell your company? Again,
you never know.
Yeah.
Except in hindsight, right? So I'll share a very public story. Yahoo tried to buy Facebook for $1 billion.
Right.
It was clear that the decision not to sell was a pretty good one. I mean,
right.
The company's worth 700 or whatever, $800 billion. That was the right decision. Instagram did get bought for $1 billion by Facebook. Was that the right decision? I don't know, actually.
That's tough. People are still debating that today, So
So, you don't really, it's hard to know in hindsight if it's the right decision or not. You just have to be happy with the decision.
Yeah.
When you make it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Yeah. And of course there's always situations where the business isn't working. That's easier.
Yeah.
Right. That's an easier decision to say, hey, this isn't quite working. So if I can get the thing to be someplace else and it makes it, that's an easier. It's when you're actually seeing success and you have to make the decision. That's where it's really hard.
I'd imagine so. I mean, that sounds like the situation you were in 2007 from what you described. And you just weren't sure whether you would have that expansion capability. And obviously selling, I mean, there's no guarantee, even though if you didn't sell, that you would find the success that Symantec has had, because they're a large organization, I would imagine, and they have more resources to throw at the problem for a period of time till they could figure it out. Which, but even still, I totally hear your point, and I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I want to ask also about selling, because you're also we're a venture investor, so I know you have some advice on this, especially for people selling for businesses for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
what kind of negotiating tactics should they be aware of? When someone, like, how do you know something's a good offer? Obviously, you have your own kind of internal analysis, I'd imagine, at your company when they're coming in terms of valuation and things like that. But if they come with you with, let's say you're valued at a billion, let's say you're valued at $1 million, and they come in and they say, we'll give you 10. But you want to get 20, so what kind of tactics can you use to kind of do that kind of thing? And so that's kind of my question. Let's start with that.
So first, I think that the best outcomes are when companies are bought, not sold.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
Right? Which means that you want to have, multiple potential buyers, because you're the only, if you're the only thing to get bought, the more people bidding, it's just supply and demand, right?
Yep.
There's one supply and there's more demand, and that helps a lot. So, for example, this was not planned, but this happened. I remember we were negotiating with Symantec when we did that deal, and I was literally in the lawyer's conference room with the Symantec people, and one of them was sitting next to me, and my phone was facing up. And
is that a bad idea? So never have your phone facing up.
Well, this actually was good because it was the CEO of a competitor of theirs calling me, and I joked. I said, I turned to the head of the corporate strategy team at Symantec or whatever, and I said, "Should I get that? Should I answer that?" I didn't know what to say. I mean, it was not planned, obviously.
That's
so,
funny,
this idea that that your company's going to get that you have alternatives is the best way, right? Because the more data that you get, the more potential acquirers, the more people that are interested in buying you'll get to a market price, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the key to figuring that kind of stuff out. But barring that, I mean, you also got to be comfortable with what's the number in your head that you're comfortable with, and balancing those two things.
Yeah, and then there's obviously also earnouts and things like that you have to take into account, assuming that you're lucky enough to get something like that. But yeah, I think that makes sense, and it's funny that we started with selling. We should have started with starting, but we're gonna get to that just right now, so it's okay. Don't worry, guys. I got it covered. So
everybody wants to focus on the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, selling that's the magic. That's the the dream, right? And some people, or going public is another thing, or just running a successful business. If you're not looking for venture money, but you just want to build a successful what they call lifestyle business, which is still can be hugely successful and make you hugely wealthy. But anyway, so let's say you are a founder, you're looking to start a business, or you're looking to raise money. You have a MVP, you have a product, or that you started to get some traction with. You have customers. What should be in your pitch deck? If I'm pitching you, what would you want to see?
I think that there's several things that are important. First, at that stage, most investors are making a decision about who you are. So they're betting on you. Right. Yeah, you might have a product, it's got a little bit of traction, et cetera, but they're really making a decision of are we backing this person in this team, right? And as part of that, it's useful to always look and say, what is some unique insight that this team or people have that makes what they're doing even more interesting, right? So there's an element there of who you are and what your insight is. I think that understanding what's possible, what's the amazingly big, crazy. This is again mostly thinking about venture investing. What's the art of what could be possible that your MVP might not necessarily be showing, but it's hey, this could lead to this, and understanding that potential, right? Meaning, and how something could potentially be very, very big. It's very hard to know exactly how that's going to happen or why that's going to happen, but knowing that there's oh, wow, it's, some people refer to this as what's the glimmer of greatness? Is there some glimmer of greatness in this early thing that you got, the diamond in the rough, so to speak? I think that's really important because people want to know that. So it's that combination of the people and the, the potential market opportunity in the product and how that could go into something really amazing. Like figuring out how to tell that story is really key at that very, very early stage.
Absolutely. I mean, the narrative that you're telling as an entrepreneur is everything. That's how you hook people. That's how you hook investors. That's how you hook early employees, how you hook early customers. It's the art of what's possible, right? It's the art of, you know, here's my idea, here's my vision. You know, do you buy into it? Will you run with it with me? And and if you're a good founder, it's not easy, but there are ways you can definitely explain your story in a way that resonates with people. So like if I were to pitch something to you, are there particular things I should be highlighting that, obviously to show how strong my team is and my experience and why I'm the right person for this particular company?
Yeah, I mean, I think the early, I mean, I think there's some simple things people don't always do. Like starting up front with like, what is the idea? Is like really important. Like just start up front. Like don't make me wait for it. Right. That's one of my most frustrating things. Like, what are you doing? Right. We're trying to reinvent customer service and we're going to center it around people and this idea of moving away from cases and tickets to one that delivers radically personal service. Like, okay, I kind of understand the big
Piqued my
idea.
curiosity now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So I think that's really important. And I think sharing the anecdotes and the stories and giving data if you have it, to back up those anecdotes and stories, because you do want to get people both their right brain and their left brain.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that the best storytellers do that, right? They get both your head and your heart. And so if you can capture the essence of that story and getting both their hearts and their minds, then that's really, really key. And I think that comes from, if you have an MVP, here's some of the metrics. And here's the story of, Jane and what she told us, right? So you kind of balance both of those things. I think that's really important, especially in the early stage, because you don't have a ton to go on at that point.
Right, right.
You know what I mean? So
I'm curious. So I've been talking a lot about this app, and I'm curious. I would love to get your thoughts real quick before we get to the lightning round. It's been great talking with you, Joseph. I've honestly had a lot of fun, and also I hope you have. And I just learned.
It's been great.
I learned so much just by speaking with you. So I appreciate you taking the time. I'm sure our audience does as well. So my question is, are you on Clubhouse? And if not, do you want an invite?
So I just got on.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So yes, so I'm good.
Awesome. I'm curious. I'll have to give you a follow on there, but I'm curious. So Clubhouse is an interesting app to me because and since you were on the venture side, I figured I'd just throw this your way. I know we hadn't really planned this, but Clubhouse is a very interesting app for me because I've seen firsthand. I've been on it since middle of January now, and it has the potential to revolutionize the way we communicate with one another. And I'm not just saying that just to say it. I actually truly believe it, having been on the app and spent 33 hours one week on the app, which is almost as much as a full-time job. So in addition to what I was working on, I was also spending 33. I don't know. I didn't sleep much that week, but
you're binge listening.
Yeah, exactly. So just the way that people can engage with one another and the actual just course of conversation and just people treating each other as other humans, which is what we kind of talked about with customer service. Another reason why I'm bringing this up, I'm curious whether, what you see in the platform as from a venture investor kind of perspective, and also from your personal perspective.
Yeah. I mean, it's clear we're living through a period of technological innovation that is just breaking down the barriers for people to access and connect with other people, right? I mean, Twitter did it with text. Yeah. This idea that I can hear directly from other people through text and also engage, if they would like, in dialogue in 240 characters originally, or whatever it was. It's clear that we're just going through a transformation of that. And like just the fact that you and I are having a high quality video conversation through software on a run-of-the-mill computer, like that was really hard to do. I mean, what people used to do is I'd have to go to the studio and I would have to get on the equipment and that's all gone, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, Clubhouse is an example of the power of audio in the same way that, podcasts have seen this, as you know, this, just huge resurgence of like the recorded voice as a channel. I think that, Clubhouse is doing a similar thing for that live audio consumption and engagement that's also can be two-way. And I think that that's really powerful. And I think that, we're just going to continue to see more and more things like that. And, Clubhouse seems quite interesting and, it's very early in its journey and I hope they're wildly successful. We're not investors in it. It's just fascinating, this idea of you no longer have the physical as a barrier to connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that is hitting every single medium for how we communicate, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
We communicate, and Clubhouse is the latest example of that.
And just, I mean, I've seen so many interesting and like really thoughtful rooms on the platform, and just people having really interesting conversations with one another, and it's more than just like you can tell it's not just going to end up being a tool that marketers end up on, right? I truly feel that way. I feel like there's a lot more to it than that. And so, yeah, I agree. I'm going to definitely have to check and follow you on Clubhouse. And
I haven't actually had any conversations yet. I've mostly been listening.
Oh, well, that's okay. Maybe we can get you on the South Florida Entrepreneur Club and you can share some of your stories with the club there.
Love to do that.
That would be awesome. Great. So, yeah. So Joseph, you made it through all the way the conversation. We are now at the point of the podcast where we do the lightning round. So when you're ready, let me know and we'll get started.
Okay. Should I be nervous about this?
I hope not.
Okay. All right. How many questions is it? I just need to prepare
it's 5 questions.
Myself.
5 questions. Okay, cool. That's all I can tell you.
Lightning round.
All right, here we go.
All right.
Hey, here we go. If you could travel back in time and make only a single investment, what would it be?
Zoom.
Nice. What word do you always misspell?
So my last name, when I'm typing in a spell checker, always comes up as insanely.
That's funny. I bet that's annoying though.
Well, then I have to make sure I add it.
Yeah, then you add it to the dictionary.
And then it's okay.
Right.
I've literally written something, Joseph Insanely. Like,
You should just change your name. If you could shop for free at one store, what would you choose?
REI.
I just bought a bike helmet from REI. They just opened one down the block for me. I'm really excited about it. iOS.
So much gear.
Yeah, iOS or Android? Clearly iOS because you're on Clubhouse. All right, last one. I hope. Well, we'll see. What would you ever go skydiving?
No.
Yeah, I don't really have that like urge to go skydiving either. But I wouldn't rule it out, but I don't think I just like don't have the feeling to do it.
I have a huge fear of falling. Like when if I'm like on like a ledge or something, I mean, I'm like freaked out.
Like if you went to the top of the Empire State Building, it would be a little freaky.
I'm actually okay as long as I don't feel like it.
Oh, okay,
right? So
okay.
Top of the Empire State Building, right? So like they have the glass, I'm like totally safe. But if you got rid of the railing and the glass, I'd be like on my hands and knees, like no. Like, and some people said like you should go skydive because you'll get over it. But it's just life is. I mean, I've broken my back twice already.
You don't need to go skydiving.
I get my adrenaline from mountain biking and that kind of stuff. Like skydiving, like like if it doesn't work.
It
doesn't
really
work. Bad,
It's really bad.
It's really bad. It's really bad.
Yeah, you don't want it not to work. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so why take the chance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. My lightning round of you, Beatles or Elvis?
Beatles, for sure.
I'm just checking. All right, okay, cool.
Yeah. We can still be friends.
I'm good with that too.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Joseph, man, I really enjoyed having you on. It's been a lot of fun. We learned a lot today. And I'm really excited about what you're doing. If anyone who's listening wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I was thinking learn about Gladly at gladly.com. Really easy to remember that. And if people want to reach out to me, it's just Joseph at gladly.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Joseph. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Thanks, Jeff. Take care.